From a tuk-tuk driver in eastern China who narrowly avoided a falling brick wall, and 3 teenagers in Texas that almost set a fireworks store on fire, to a massive landslide in Brazil that slowly swallowed part of a street, and a family in California that had to evacuate during a freak wildfire. Here are 10 terrifying close calls caught on CCTV camera. Landing an airplane is no easy task. There's a lot of back and forth required between the pilot, air traffic control, and everyone else on the runway. Even when everything appears to run smoothly, a tiny mistake can lead to catastrophe. On July 7th of 2017, Air Canada Flight 759 had one of the closest calls in modern history. It was close to midnight, and the pilot was supposed to land on runway 28R at San Francisco International Airport. They accidentally lined up with the wrong runway and began careening toward 4 planes waiting for takeoff. According to the National Transport Safety Board, the Air Canada flight was about 100 feet above the ground when it pulled up and avoided the planes. It passed only 60 feet above the second plane in line, which is way too close for 2 commercial airplanes. Thankfully, nobody on board was injured during the aborted landing. The plane circled around and landed on the correct runway afterward. The NTSB chairman Jim Hall called it the most significant near miss we've had in this decade. There's a simple question at the heart of this story. How do you land on the wrong runway? We may never truly know, as the cockpit voice recording data was conveniently erased. Apparently, it took over 24 hours to report the incident to the NTSB. That caused the cockpit tape to record over itself multiple times. Anxi County, China is a prefecture-level city in southern Fujian province. They're known for their varieties of oolong, a special type of tea that requires some TLC to make. If they paid attention to the tea leaves on November 28th of 2019, they would have seen this video coming. The yellow truck starts slowing down, but then its right tires fall through the ground. The sinkhole expands and nearly swallows the entire truck. Our 2 shopkeepers watch in astonishment, not knowing what to do next. Images of the accident put the sinkhole in perspective. According to reports, it was about 32 feet long and 16 feet wide. They also claim local shopkeepers were to blame, not the road itself. There was a height difference between the road and the shops, so the owners just filled it in with concrete. The DIY project led to this massive sinkhole. About 20 hours north of Anxi County, in the smaller city of Yanping, another sinkhole opened in the middle of a residential neighborhood. This time, it was 100% the road's fault. It looks like a normal night, but our scooter rider and pedestrian have no idea what they narrowly missed. Suddenly, the road collapses, causing both men to jump. The scooter keeps going while the other guy runs off with his dog. We imagine the parked car was only inches away from falling in. It didn't take long for the sinkhole to triple in size. You can see how big it got the following morning. That thing must have continued collapsing through the night. Officials claim the collapse happened due to a water leaking in from the sewer pipe. The hole was filled in later that day. Lighting fireworks is a common tradition for many cultures around the world. In the United States, there's no day more popular than the 4th of July. Around 10:30 p.m. on July 4th of 2022, 3 men parked outside a fireworks store with the intention of causing chaos and mayhem. Keep your eye on the kid in the number 90 Jadeveon Clowney jersey. He is our primary suspect. When the video starts, you see the 3 men roll up and park. 2 men walk in first, followed by number 90. You can almost tell by the looks of the video that they're about to do something incredibly stupid. We see number 90 holding a firework near the shelves. He meanders around, waiting for an opportunity to set off the firework. His other buddy walks up with some words of encouragement. They laugh, and then number 90 strikes his lighter. He drops the firework and bolts as clueless shoppers keep walking around. 2 guys rush in to stomp out the fire, but it proves too dangerous. The man in green comes back a few moments later with a fire extinguisher and puts it out for good. Thankfully, the sparks didn't trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. Apparently, the perps made off with $200 worth of fireworks. The explosion was probably a distraction so they could escape the store. Police released the security camera footage in an attempt to identify the suspects. About a month later, one of them was caught and charged with arson. Have you ever seen a landslide swallow an entire neighborhood? Well, that's what happened to this tiny village outside Rio, Brazil. The favelas, also known as slums and ghettos, are known for being the poorest places in the country. You've seen them in movies and on TV. They're the small houses built into the mountains that action heroes love running down. Well, this scene was no Hollywood stunt. The locals barely made it out of their homes before disaster struck. Residents flee as the first building starts sliding. It drags everything with it, including the streetlights and neighboring houses. Soon, the entire road collapses, causing the complex across the street to slide away. People rush over to inspect the damage. You can still see the houses sliding away at a snail's pace. For many, all they could do was watch in horror as the landslide swallowed all of their worldly possessions. Thankfully, they escaped with their lives. A similar close call happened in Chongqing, China, when a retaining wall suddenly collapsed during a freak landslide. A woman was turning her scooter around when she heard something behind her. Her quick thinking likely saved her and another person's life. It was July 16th of 2020. The woman appears to be arranging something on her scooter when something falls off the wall. Whatever it was, she didn't like it. So she tried turning around to go back the way she came. Someone else approaches when she's about halfway. That's when the wall starts leaning toward them. We imagine it made a cracking sound, which caught her attention. She dropped the bike and practically tackled the other person out of the way seconds before the wall came down. Aftermath footage shows how bad the collapse was. Thanks to her quick feet, she's alive to tell the story. Meizhou, China is a prefecture-level city in Guangdong province. It's home to about 3.8 million people who all know their way around town. Some of them know exactly where all the fire stations are, which comes in handy when your car's on fire. On May 16th of 2021, a delivery driver was hauling some furniture across the city when his truck bed burst into flames. Lucky for him, he was driving by the fire station. A man sprints along the sidewalk as the flaming truck speeds down the road. It takes a hard left turn into the fire station as the other guy waves him in. They run inside and scream for help. The firefighters sprung into action, most of them still in their slippers. They set up the hoses and put the fire out in under 90 seconds. While the cargo was a lost cause, the truck was still in good condition. Now, we're not sure what caused the fire, but we can take an educated guess. The driver was carrying what looked like new furniture. Perhaps the paint was still wet, and something caused it to catch fire. California wildfires are among the scariest sights on Earth. A normal day can turn into a hellish landscape in the blink of an eye. Residents are forced to flee with their loved ones and most precious belongings. They can only hope the fire doesn't claim their home. That harsh reality sunk in for this family on October 27th of 2019. They lived in Santa Clarita, California, a city in northwestern LA County. A massive wildfire had been burning for 3 days. Now, it was right on their doorstep. Footage from the family's doorbell camera captured the high anxiety state before they evacuated. It is heartbreaking to watch the little boy run outside with his toys and stuffed animals. One even falls while he's packing the truck. Thankfully, it doesn't get left behind. The clip ends with a plane flying overhead. They were either evacuating or spraying the ground with flame retardant. The tick fire, as it came to be called, forced 40,000 other people to evacuate in the Santa Clarita Valley. It began near Tick Canyon Road as a 200-acre fire on October 24th. About an hour later, it exploded into an 850-acre blaze, threatening 10,000 homes and buildings. In the end, the tick fire burned over 4,600 acres before it was contained on Halloween of 2019. Cooking with gas has its pros and cons. People say it cooks food faster and it's easier to control the heat. Then again, gas leaks can lead to hazardous situations, like this one in Fuzhou, China. On December 6th of 2019, a mother was preparing dinner when her pot caught fire. She did the smart thing and tried turning the gas off, but something wasn't right. This video teaches us two valuable lessons. Never leave the stove unattended, and don't stick around if you smell gas. The mother and child barely made it out in time. Thankfully, it doesn't look like the fire spread. Fun fact, according to the National Fire Protection Association, or the NFPA, electric stoves cause 2.5 times more fires than gas stoves. Electric stoves also cause 5 times more injuries than gas. Why? Well, it's likely because people are more cautious when using gas stoves. We imagine many electric injuries involve touching hot surfaces that don't look hot anymore. High-rise construction is a dangerous business. While they're probably used to it, disaster can still strike at any time. Just ask this guy who nearly plummeted hundreds of feet. Now, we're not sure where or when this accident took place. If we had to guess, it was probably somewhere with loose safety regulations. For this man to be working so close to the edge, he'd need a harness or some kind of safety net. OSHA wouldn't be too happy about this one. 2 men work near the edge. Then, something topples over, forcing one of them to fall with it. He just barely hangs on like an action hero and dangles hundreds of feet in the air. His buddy rushes down and calls for help. That's when our worker takes matters into his own hands. Literally. He scales around the pillar and jumps safely to the next floor. He paces back and forth once on solid ground. The experience probably put his entire life in perspective. Redditors commented on the worker's climbing ability. The way he grabbed and navigated around the pillar suggested he had some sort of climbing background. Get ready to meet one of the luckiest people on the planet. This man's close call in Zhuhai City, China came down to a matter of inches. On October 17th of 2017, a man and his Audi were on their way to work. It was just after 8 a.m. and traffic wasn't too bad. Then, something fell out of the sky. Our driver had no sense of reality when he climbed out of the car. He probably sat there wondering why heaven looks like downtown Zhuhai. Another person rushes over to see if the driver is okay. According to reports, he only suffered a broken ankle. From another angle, you can see where the crane fell from a nearby construction site. It reached all the way across the road and could have hit people walking on the sidewalk. Now, we're not sure why the crane fell or who was at fault. What we do know is this driver is lucky to be alive. Nanning is the capital and largest city in Guangxi, China. It's home to about 8.7 million people and one very lucky tuk-tuk driver. On May 27th of 2023, a driver turned down a side street and passed by an old brick wall. Little did they know, it was on the verge of collapse. That's our wall on the left side of your screen. You can see where the center has deteriorated after years of rain and wind. It was actually built in the 1960s, but was doomed to fail in 2023. Our tuk-tuk driver comes down the road and drives by the wall. As he passes, it looks like the wind picks up slightly. Apparently, that gust was enough to knock it over, narrowly missing him. From another angle, you can see the driver was about 20 feet away when the wall fell. Local reports said the wall collapsed after years of neglect and little maintenance. The tropical climate of eastern China is prone to wind and monsoons. Old brick walls only last so long. Most railroad crossings do everything they can to warn you about an incoming train. The arms come down, the lights flash, some of them have loud bells and whistles. Still, people have a bad habit of blowing through the tracks. Take this biker, for example. In the sleepy little town of Kostelec nad Orlicí in the Czech Republic, Jiří Duška took a ride to the local grocery store. The sun blinded him as he came over a hill. He never saw the railroad arm. Jiří gets clotheslined by the crossing arm. He and his 1985 Simpson motorcycle land hard on the tracks. Then, a good Samaritan springs into action and drags his body and bike out of harm's way. Moments later, the train arrives. It stops exactly where Jiří would have been. Our good Samaritan is 32-year-old Dalibor Vobornik. He said he arrived at the station about 2 hours earlier than normal. Usually, he's wearing headphones and standing at the other end. That day, he was standing at the front and wasn't listening to anything. That's when he heard the loud bang and sprung into action. Thanks to Dalibor, Jiří only suffered a few scrapes and bruises. They met again a few days later to watch the footage at the police station for the first time. If you enjoyed this video and want to see another just like it, then be sure to click the link on screen now. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.